Story 1. That's a difficult situation. Ultimatums can signify deeper issues in a relationship, so it's important to address them openly and honestly. I would want to have a serious conversation with my girlfriend to understand why she feels the need to issue such an ultimatum and whether we are truly ready for the next step. It's crucial to ensure that any decision, whether to propose or part ways, is made with careful consideration and mutual understanding. Story 2. Like most things, it depends on context. If it had been something you discussed and agreed on over a long time, and you had been dragging your heels for months or years, that could be warranted. If it was out of the blue, that is not acceptable. There are other nuances and contexts that many do not consider when replying. However, generally speaking, it is a clear yes or no, which may warrant an ultimatum from either party to end the relationship. Story 3. More context is needed. Did you discuss any kind of marriage timeline? Not that it can't change, but if expectations were set, an unmarried person may feel strung along in this situation. Why does she want to get married? Why do you not? All of this should be discussed before making a decision. Story 4. I would ask her what happened that makes her feel like she needs to make an ultimatum. Start talking to her. Find out where she is at. Make sure she feels heard. Story 5. I would definitely leave, but it depends on how long you have been in the relationship. I can understand if it's a long-term commitment of more than 6 years. Then I can certainly see where she is coming from. Story 6. Have you discussed this before the ultimatum? If so, what were the results of the discussion? If not, then please exit. Story 7. The only companions in my life right now are my 2 huskies. We are practically already bonded because we do not have any physical relationship, but they certainly boss me around a lot. Story 8. The term ultimatum negates the possibility of any alternative option, so out of the options given, I would leave as I am not going to propose under such terms. If a woman truly wants marriage, she has the option of proposing herself, making an ultimatum of this sort completely ridiculous. Story 9. Leave. That situation is never going to improve. You will then be legally held hostage when you want to correct the error. Story 10. Leave. There is nothing good that could come of this. Even if I were to say yes and stay, what sort of difficult marriage would that be? Story 11. Honestly, I have every intention of marrying my girlfriend, but if she said that she would be starting a fight, it would change my view of her. I would wonder when she would try to give me another ultimatum and how controlling of a relationship I would be legally tying myself to. I would also be frustrated that she is so eager to get married that she would threaten to jeopardize the relationship, but isn't willing to do something proactive about it, like proposing to me herself. It would lower my opinion of her in nearly every way and most likely affect my desire to marry her negatively. Story 12. If the title of being married is more important to her than our relationship and she isn't willing to propose, then who knows what other ultimatums will arise in the future once we are married. In that case, it becomes a situation of either doing what I want or facing the possibility of dividing our assets. Story 13. If she is into ultimatums, then I am not interested in her. If I give in, it will only be a matter of time before the next ultimatum, and then the next, and so on. Story 14. I will never understand if it is so important. Just do it yourself. If someone tried to pull that with me, I would tell them to grow up. Story 15. I would like to understand why she feels the need to do this, and then I would leave. If she is doing this now, she will likely continue into our marriage. Ultimatums are one of the worst red flags in a relationship. Story 16. Leave. It won't be the last time she gives you an ultimatum after seeing how willing you are if you accept this. Story 17. The only right answer is to leave. You don't want to enter a marriage by force under any circumstances. Story 18. Seeing that I am single, I would be very confused. However, hypothetically, I would probably leave. I want to propose when we are both ready to get married, not just when she is ready. Additionally, if she is giving ultimatums and not having mature conversations about serious topics, then she is not the right person for me. Story 19. I only open up to someone worthy, so that's fine unless, of course, I'm not ready financially. I will explain myself. If she doesn't approve, I'm not the last man on earth. nor is she the last woman on Earth. Things should end healthily as they started healthily. I hope things won't turn out that way. Story 20. I wondered who she was and how she broke into my home. I would also ask if we could grab coffee and get to know each other before I figured out how to handle the ultimatum. Story 21. Was this discussed several years ago? Did you have an open conversation about your plans and confirm that you both wanted the same thing? If not, ultimatums are not acceptable and it's better to leave. Story 22. Hopefully, I would still have enough sanity to recognize I am hallucinating and check myself into the hospital before my brain further deteriorates. What if I actually do have a girlfriend, but I have a disorder I am unaware of and have forgotten about her? She might walk in here and ask me why I haven't proposed yet, and I would be like, "How did you get into my house?" She would respond, "It's okay. You're just having one of your episodes." And I would say, "Don't gaslight me. You need to get out of my house before I call the police." Then she might say, "No, they'll lock you up again. You hated it there last time. Remember?" Learning that there is a symptom of schizophrenia and many other disorders that makes it impossible to even realize something is wrong really affects me. How could I ever trust myself? Story 23. I'm married now to someone else. However, I was given that ultimatum in my previous relationship. I said no. I wasn't ready, but she left since the apartment we lived in was fully in my name only. Story 24. I'm a little surprised at all the answers saying leave. Is it simply that the word ultimatum has such a negative connotation? I mean, I think most men on this forum would agree that most women have a short window in which they are most attractive to men and are most able to attract a suitable husband. Pretty much all straight women want to be married, whether they admit it to you or even themselves, and they have a limited age range in which they can conceive biological children. Given this, coupled with the fact that men have a considerably longer window in which they can marry and reproduce, it is natural for most women to feel some anxiety over the direction the relationship is going in. This anxiety increases as a function of her age and how long you have been together. Is it just the way the question is approached, "Do this or else," that turns you off? If she sat you down and explained her thought processes but still concluded with the absolute conditional that if you don't get married soon, she will be forced to move on, would that be okay? I think it would be, because everyone has the right to move on if their reasonable needs are not being met, and being transparent about one's intentions is most fair to your partner. So, is the problem simply that the ultimatum was issued without a discussion, a chance for you to consider things and contribute your thoughts and feelings? Story 25. A person should take a day to reflect on their life, plans, and true desires. If someone does not want marriage and children and prefers to have no support system for their later years, it may be time to part ways so that both individuals can pursue their own aspirations. It is unfair to either person, especially if there is genuine love between them, not to work together toward fulfilling each other's needs. Story 26. Ultimatums are not the answer. If a person does not want to propose and clearly communicates that, they are indicating they do not care about you or your desires. Forcing the issue will only lead to resentment eventually. Story 27. Context is missing, but if she is a good woman, I would tell her that I cannot yield in response to such a threat. What will our marriage look like if I yield to your threats? It would not last. I must say no, not because I don't love you or care about you, but because giving me a few hours to decide is a serious threat. I will let you reconsider your position tonight and rephrase it to me tomorrow in a respectful manner. Story 28. I would be angry. Instead of playing immature games like this, she could have discussed my views with me and explained how important it is for her that I am the one to propose. I fear the communication problems that will arise in the future if ultimatums are her way of communicating. Story 29. I laughed as I started packing. I have raised 4 children, the eldest in her 40s, married to her husband, and my eldest son as well. I don't need the drama. Story 30. Leave right there and then. I will not be bullied into proposing when I'm not feeling like it or waiting for a better time, even by a woman I love. It's 2024. We are supposedly fighting for equality, so if she wants to get married, how about she proposes? Story 31. I saw a video yesterday on this topic, and I am certain about it. The speaker suggested that a woman giving a marriage ultimatum is more in love with the idea of marriage than she is in love with you. I wonder if any women who have given an ultimatum have thoughts on this idea. Story 32. Men who would leave. How many of you would leave if you proposed and she said no? If you leave, isn't that the same thing? Story 33. We're already married, but if she had done that, I would have left. It's my life and relationship too, and I'm not going to be forced into a massive shift when I'm not ready. Story 34. It depends. If I did not feel uncomfortable and was sure we could live together, I would propose. However, I can also envision a situation in which I would leave. Story 35. It depends on the context. She is either desperate and values marriage more than the actual person, or the man she is with does not love her enough to propose. It's a fine line. If the woman states from the start that she wants marriage, that is a red flag. However, if marriage does not come within a couple of years, there is another issue. Story 36. Personally, I would want to first understand why she is acting this way. There could be a reason for her sudden change in behavior. Story 37. We already discussed marriage and concluded that it wouldn't make any sense right now, considering both of our life situations. This would be so out of character for her that I would genuinely be concerned for her well-being. Story 38. A friend of mine did this. I found it a bit strange. If he wanted to, he would. If he doesn't, it means he is not ready yet. Just because you are, it doesn't mean you can force it. Either wait or leave if it's such a big deal. Story 39. In this hypothetical scenario, I would let her go. I think one of the biggest mistakes you can make is to allow your partner to bully you into doing things. I believe she is likely to punish you for it. I see people saying to talk to her and figure out the reason for her behavior, but I approach the situation from a straightforward perspective. Agree to whatever she says or let her walk away. I did not consider dialogue as an option in this hypothetical scenario. Story 40. No more internet for you. I thought you were mature enough not to follow TikTok and Instagram trends. Story 41. It's funny. We never hear about it going the other way. At least, personally, I have never heard of a man giving an ultimatum about marriage. My partner and I have been together for 4 years. I want to marry her, but I am in no rush to do so. I would hate to be given an ultimatum. What if I'm not ready at this moment? Why does the marriage aspect matter so much? I feel the relationship remains the same at its core. Pressuring the other person to initiate that makes it seem like the marriage is more for you than for us. I understand that marriage is a clear indication of where things are headed in the future. However, to me, it would put an incredible amount of strain on our dynamic and reshape my perception of that person. Story 42. Saves you a divorce settlement and child support later in life. Bullet dodged. Story 43. I do not respond well to ultimatums, especially concerning lifelong commitments. Anyone who would sacrifice a relationship for a chance at marriage has their priorities misplaced. Why would anyone want to be married to someone who values the relationship less than the legal documents that bind us together? An ultimatum creates a disparity in the enthusiasm to make the marriage work. One party feels compelled to force it, leading them to believe they had no choice, while the other party may relent, uncertain if it was the right decision. Both individuals need to be equally enthusiastic about making the marriage work. Furthermore, rewarding the use of ultimatums allows them to become a common tactic in disagreements. I would not want to commit to someone who resorts to ultimatums. A partner using ultimatums is a red flag for me. Using an ultimatum to secure marriage is a self-defeating concept. Consequently, we would likely end up in conflict and break up soon after. Story 44. Agree to plan an extraordinary destination bachelor party with friends. Have an adventurous weekend filled with excitement. Maybe confront a challenge. Discover that I am in love with my best man and another groomsman but say nothing. Go through with the wedding. Live a secret life with my 2 partners while simultaneously loving and growing my family with my wife. Eventually die happy from old age in our summer home on the Chesapeake Bay, where my wife tells me she always knew. Then my friends walk in, and I slip into peaceful oblivion with my three loves. Story 45. Definitely need more context here. Why is she suddenly so frustrated that she gave you an ultimatum? How long have you been together? Have you talked about marriage before? Are you living together? If not, maybe try that first before making it official. You don't truly know a person until you live with them. But getting married because someone gave you an ultimatum? That's not a good reason for me. I wouldn't want to force someone to marry me, but that's just my perspective. If I were you, I would really try to find out why she is suddenly acting this way. Story 46. We've only been together for about 10.5 months, so it would be a bit of a shock, but I'm fairly certain I want to spend the rest of my life with her. I knew by month 5 probably. Story 47. Leave. I would have expressed my intentions early on that I never wanted marriage, so this would be the end. Story 48. Assuming this is coming out of context, I would like to have a meaningful conversation with her. What triggered it? What are her actual concerns? If it's within the context of us dating for a while, and we have already discussed this aspect while just waiting for the perfect moment, I will accelerate my timeline for a proposal. I might also playfully suggest that she could propose too. If it comes out of nowhere and feels pushy, then I would consider ending the relationship after a brief conversation. I believe ultimatums like this are questionable, similar to tactics used by a snake oil salesman. Story 49. Sit her down and tell her what aspects of our relationship we need to resolve before I propose. I love her more than anything, but there are things she mentioned she will work on, and I need those addressed first. Story 50. We haven't discussed this nearly enough. While our relationship has been characterized by respect, open communication, and mutual appreciation, this ultimatum contradicts everything we have built together. Trying to force my hand based on how things have progressed, I can only assume you have some expectation that has either been left unaddressed prior to this conversation or has only recently become a fixed understanding. I will choose to leave and wish you the best, as you truly deserve it. Story 51. I would exit if you want to sit down and have a polite and respectful chat. However, if you want to make ultimatums, you lose. That will soon become the norm for every life-changing desire she has. Story 52. All the single people who have probably never dated saying to leave are amusing. Instead, they should be advising you to talk to her and see what is happening. There might be some miscommunication occurring. Story 53. I proposed not too long ago, but if I hadn't, I would say yes. I love my partner and I have already personally committed to being with her. Story 54. Explain to her exactly why I haven't asked her to marry me yet. I would likely end the relationship. An adult can express their unhappiness with a situation and ask their partner to make reasonable changes. If their partner chooses to change, that's great. If not, they should decide to end the relationship rather than manipulate their partner into making a decision they do not want to make. Story 55. I would leave. If it's an actual ultimatum, there's no way I will set a precedent that it works. If she feels she has to communicate like that, something is wrong that needs to be addressed. Fixing it should be the priority, not rushing forward. If it's a sternly worded nudge that she is ready and knows that I am ready, I would leave on principle. Within an hour, I would return with a ring, because there's no way I would be foolish enough not to understand her. Story 56. I say goodbye. I'm not signing a contract that essentially makes me a slave for another person who can treat me poorly for the rest of my life. If I have to be a literal slave to gain your affection, you are a vile person, and I do not want your affection. Yes, it absolutely is slavery. If I cannot or will not make my payments, I am thrown in prison. Labor coerced by threats of violence or imprisonment is the definition of slavery. Story 57. If that ultimatum just falls out of the sky, then I would leave. If we were having a conversation about marriage and she just wants to get married and is looking for that in her life, we would discuss it. Story 58. Propose what? Asexual favor? After you get married, that stops happening. So propose a movie at the theater with a hole in the bottom of the popcorn bucket. That's some helpful advice. Or just don't get married. Story 59. If she had done it, even during the time when I had the ring but had not yet proposed, I would have left her on the spot. Story 60. If someone needs something in their relationship that you are not prepared to give them, you should set them free. I want children, but my wife does not. This has always been clear. I would rather be without children with her than have children with anyone else. She makes my life worth living. Communicate your expectations, desires, and needs without ultimatums. Story 61. Stop wasting each other's time and be honest. If you don't believe in marriage, then leave. Story 62. I would most likely leave as I don't care for ultimatums. However, before I left, I would need to ask my wife what I should do in such a situation. I believe she would tell me to leave as well. Story 63. It's my house. If anyone is leaving, it's you. This is 2024. Women are equal, if not superior to men. Feel free to buy a ring and propose to me, but make sure you're packed and ready to leave. Even though we've been together for 6 years, you don't listen to me. So you don't know if I'm ready for marriage or if I am just dragging my feet in breaking up with you because I'm lazy. It somewhat depends on the age of both parties and whether each has been married before. My second wife and I, before we got married, were adamant that we would never marry again due to our previous marriages. But things changed. We helped each other heal. We made the decision together to get married. I discovered my heart was safe with her. I am an emotional man. I feel deeply and cry or get choked up reading or watching sweet movies. She loves it. My ex thought I was weak. Story 64. We are living in 2024. To say it is a man's job to propose is an outdated notion. Many people have fought hard to remove all gender stereotypes and roles. To imply anything else is sexist. Women can buy a ring and propose too. Story 65. It really depends. If I know I would not marry her, I would confront her about the ultimatum and break up. If I have no idea if I would marry her and we have only been seeing each other for 1 or 2 years, I would address it and end the relationship. I dislike ultimatums. If I already had a ring, I would present it and say, "You beat me to it." Then pivot to understanding why she felt the need to issue an ultimatum and discuss it. If I think I want to marry her but just haven't proposed yet, I would refuse to respond to the ultimatum. Instead, I would suggest having a serious conversation, possibly offering to take time off work and go away for a few days to focus on her thoughts and reasons for the ultimatum. Depending on her reaction during this emergency discussion, I would have my answer. Story 66. I lament the social norm that says I have to be the one to propose instead of her asking about marriage if she wants to. I would leave because I do not want to get married at all, not just to her. This would be after a discussion, not simply turning around and walking out. Story 67. I would leave. Marriage should be something discussed together. A proposal is a formality, a small event to mark the occasion. At the time of the proposal, the couple should be on the same page about getting married. If the woman says propose or leave, there is a fundamental miscommunication between the two partners. Story 68. I would tell her that her proposal is somewhat weak, and I need something more romantic. Additionally, I require a ring, and she should ask my parents for permission before proposing. Story 69. I would be genuinely concerned because we have discussed it, looked at rings a few times, and decided that since we just bought a house and have been living there for a decade, we may as well wait until we are fully financially able to host a good party. Such a significant change would make me really worried that something is affecting her. Story 70. I don't issue ultimatums, especially when it comes to love. We will discuss the reasons behind the ultimatum, and then I will make my decision. Story 71. It's best to leave, in my opinion. Telling your partner to do something or else is toxic and controlling. If she is willing to threaten you about this, what else is she willing to do? If she wants a proposal so badly, maybe she should propose to you and hope you say yes, like many men have done throughout history. Story 72. If she presented it to me without any prior discussion, I would find it quite strange and start to doubt her. Story 73. If I am not ready to propose, I would be honest with her. It is better to be upfront about my feelings than to commit to something I am not ready for. Story 74. I would leave. who wants to get married so desperately that if you don't marry them right now, they will leave. It sounds like she is plotting something. Story 75. I support the idea of marriage, but using ultimatums is not the right approach. Often, it's not just about the message, but also how it is communicated. In other words, it's not just the content, but the presentation as well. I am not in favor of ultimatums. I do not appreciate people who use them. That is insistence, not persistence. Insistence means demanding your way or leaving. It is rude and immature. There can be various reasons why a man may not propose. For example, he might be too comfortable in his current situation. More likely, he may see the woman as girlfriend material, meaning he enjoys spending time with her but does not view her as marriage material and feels uncertain. There is a significant difference between the two. I have experienced a difficult marriage. I was overly optimistic and ignored the warning signs, including indications of infidelity, poor conflict resolution skills, poor anger management, and disruptive behavior. I now advise men not to rush into marriage and to be cautious about their feelings when they receive attention from someone of the opposite sex. There are, of course, many other reasons to consider. Story 76. I suggest you leave because there are reasons why you are not already engaged, and they are not due to her giving you an ultimatum. Story 77. I propose because we have been together for 9.5 years and have a child together. I am ready to get married at any time, but neither of us really cares about that. We are much more focused on replacing the walkway on the side of our house. Story 78. You are leaving out important information. How long have you been dating? How long have you been together? Do you live together? Have you promised to marry her in the past? What are both of your ages? Have you discussed having children? All these issues are relevant. Men may not consider them, but women do. If she is wasting her time with you, she needs to find a man who will give her what she wants and needs. Story 79. You shouldn't start a marriage or engagement based on an ultimatum, as it may not last long. Story 80. In my personal situation, I would be proposing, but that's only because I already plan on it. I am just saving for the ring. In every other relationship, I would have told her goodbye. Normally, a guy knows whether he wants to marry you or not. Story 81. My buddy's girlfriend did this about 3 to 6 months into their relationship. She told him to propose or leave, probably in a nicer way than how I'm expressing it. They have been happily married since 2008. Story 82. Even if I see a future with her, that move is extremely immature. You cannot rush a marriage. Getting married when you are not ready is a recipe for disaster. Story 83. Women can propose too. I would leave since this girl wants to get married but won't take the initiative. She is not wife material. Story 84. My girlfriend didn't use those exact words, but she essentially gave me an ultimatum. 2 months after university, she was strongly suggesting that she wanted to move in together and take the next steps. Emotionally, I wasn't opposed. However, financially, I was burdened with significant student debt and just starting my career. So, I was living with my parents to pay down the debt as quickly as possible. As a result, I've been single for 5 years, but I now have a job making over $100,000 and bought my own house in the metropolitan area where we both still live last summer. While the debt isn't fully paid off, it has been significantly reduced, and the payments are less than 10% of my post-tax income. Aside from feeling a bit lonely, I am doing quite well. Story 85. This happened to me when I was in my 20s with my first true love as a grown man. I had actually gone out looking at engagement rings but just wasn't ready to make that commitment. When she gave me the ultimatum, I refused on the grounds that I didn't want to be pressured into a lifetime commitment and that she shouldn't want to be married that way. We spent an evening discussing what was causing the pressure to rush into things with that statement. That conversation, which started with talking about marriage, ended with us breaking up. She just couldn't accept not having a stronger commitment from me. We almost got back together several times, but it didn't happen. It was one of the worst times in my life, but ultimately the ultimatum and her insistence on marriage before I felt fully ready just rubbed me the wrong way, even though I loved her. 6 to 7 years later, A more mature version of myself ended up with the perfect woman. I think about that decision daily and thank my younger self for at least getting that one thing right. Story 86. Anyone who gives ultimatums like this belongs in the streets. Do not negotiate with threats. Once you give in, it's over. Story 87. Without context, I can say this sounds like high-pressure controlling behavior and does not bode well for the future of the relationship. I do not plan to marry unless finances drastically change, either by her becoming wealthy or by my being so wealthy that I do not mind risking losing half of it. Government involvement in relationships is not necessary, and marriage presents a severe financial risk to men, even with a prenuptial agreement, which are often ineffective, and even if the woman was at fault. I like the idea of living as a couple, starting a family, and being in a committed, monogamous, lifelong relationship. But I will not risk half my life's earnings for it. Story 88. It shows she cares. If she's the type to always impose things on me, probably not. If it's just her doing this for the first time, then why not? I think it depends on what kind of person she is. Story 89. I believe this situation requires more information. When you encounter situations like this, it can be perceived as a threat. To be fair, sometimes it is, but other times it's just an honest conversation. I had a discussion with my then boyfriend, now husband, about 1.5 years into our relationship, expressing my desire for marriage. I mentioned that it might not have to be with him, although I would love for it to be, and I asked him about his goals. He shared that marriage was also one of his goals. I think this conversation is reasonable. I've known women who have been strung along for years, staying because they were promised a ring or became too comfortable. Those women, in my opinion, should have had this talk. Assuming your partner is not unreasonable, it's important to be fair. Story 90. With an ultimatum like that, I would leave. There is a considerable age difference between my girlfriend and me, and early on we expressed that we would not consider marriage. However, she has told me several times since that she wants to marry sometime before she retires in 10 years and would prefer it to be me, as I am the best man she has ever had in her life. I love her, but I will not bring up the subject of marriage again. Story 91. If she wants you for the long term, she wouldn't care whether you propose or not. It's not like anything is going to change, right? Story 92. Get down on one knee and say, "Will you make me the happiest man in the world by leaving me in peace forever?" Story 93. Leave. It doesn't matter if it's about marriage or anything else. If she is giving ultimatums, we are done. Story 94. I got one about children and location. If not here and children back there where we left. So I ended it with her. Ultimatums will never work in a relationship. She seems happier now and so am I. It likely was never going to work out for us. Story 95. Leave. There is not much room in any relationship for an ultimatum. If you want to discuss a proposal, there is a way to do that without drawing a line in the sand. Instead, we should have a respectful discussion about the wants, needs, and desires of both parties. If you want to establish the precedent of "you give me what I want or I leave," then that will hang over us for our entire relationship and we will not be equal partners. One partner will dominate the other by threatening to leave if they do not get what they want. When will the next ultimatum come? Complete this task or I leave. I will end up living under your control until you eventually leave because you push me to my limits instead of trying to find a mutually beneficial agreement. Story 96. I probably will leave. I don't do ultimatums. I am usually open about my views on marriage before things get too serious, so to be honest, I don't see it happening. Story 97. I am married now, but I do not do well with ultimatums. If my wife had given me an ultimatum, I would have politely shown her the door. Luckily, my wife is very easygoing. I have friends who are definitely married to women who give ultimatums, and you know what they all have in common. Their lives are miserable and their wives are controlling. That is not going to be my life. And if you receive an ultimatum and you give in to get married, just remember it is only supposed to be for the rest of your life. Story 98. I would think about it and then I would propose or leave. This assumes we have been together for over 2 years. Story 99. Leave. Always leave. It's toxic for a person to feel the need for that status. Save yourself a lifetime of mistakes. Leave. Story 100. If I were a man, I would leave. Dear fellow women, if you are considering this, you are part of the problem and should seek help. Story 101. Leave. If we have reached the point where you are giving me ultimatums and I am not excited to marry you, then the relationship has no value to begin with. I do not respond to ultimatums. If anyone tries to pressure me into a decision, they can do that on their own. Story 102. Leave. Not just marriage, but once you start using ultimatums or any type of either slash or language, you're a zealot, and there's no place in my life for that. Story 103. I would ask her who she is because I am single and have been for 6 years. After my initial shock, I would tell her that since we just met 5 seconds ago, I cannot just marry a stranger. However, in my mind, if I met a girl who had a steady job and we had been serious for 2 years, that is when the marriage discussion begins. We would typically get married around the 3rd year of our relationship. In my personal opinion, if marriage is on the table and it has been more than 3 years since your relationship became serious, it is time for that relationship to end. One of the partners is interfering with the other's timeline. Story 104. I say, go to the mall where the diamond store is located, park, and get out. Walk over to Outback Steakhouse, sit in front on the benches, and wait for Uber Eats to arrive with your order from In-N-Out. Never let them know your next move. Story 105. Once she gives you one ultimatum, you've opened the door for future ultimatums. So that's going to be a no from me. Story 106. I proposed and ended up divorced. There were a few good years, but many difficult ones as well. The divorce was awful, and the children are still affected by it. If you are not interested, do not proceed. Anyone who truly loves you will respect your feelings and adjust their timeline accordingly. Story 107. However, I don't like ultimatums. What comes next? To be fair, I would have already proposed if I were in a better financial situation, and I will most likely propose by the end of the year if everything goes as planned. Story 108. There are only 2 answers when it comes to marriage: hell yes, or hell no. There's no, I'm not sure. I think so, but I don't know. If that's your answer, then that means you shouldn't marry her. I know that's probably a difficult conclusion to reach on your own, but when considering marriage, it's hell yes or nothing. You can't be lukewarm. You need to think about it from both perspectives. She has to consider things like having kids by a certain age. After 35, it becomes a lot more difficult to conceive and the risk factors increase. As men, we don't have to worry about that as much because, although our semen quality declines with age, we can still father children well into our 60s, and sometimes even into our 70s. Try to see it from her perspective and understand that while giving you an ultimatum isn't fair and can feel unreasonable, it may be her way of expressing that she wants to get married. She may feel that this is the only way to achieve what she desires in a relationship. You need to ask yourself, what do I want? And can I see myself with this woman for the rest of my life? If the answer is I don't know, set her free. It won't be easy, and it's going to hurt, but it's the best thing for both of you. She can meet a man who wants to marry and have kids, and you can meet someone whose values and goals align better with your own. Someone who you are truly excited about instead of lukewarm. Again, it's not an easy decision, but a breakup might be the right one for both of you. Any situation where one party is giving an ultimatum is generally a toxic one. Story 109. I told her from the very beginning that I have no intention of marriage, so I would be quite surprised. The outcome will likely be somewhat unsatisfactory for both parties. Story 110. It depends on the reason for the ultimatum. How would you feel if I said, yes, marry me, and made an appointment at City Hall next week? We could pick an appropriately priced ring together the next day. There would be no big wedding or reception, but you would be married. What would you say to that response? Story 111. I would talk it out with her, but if she is very persistent and headstrong, I would leave because we are 21 and have only been dating for 11 months. Story 112. First, assume my 3 close female friends would be classified as friends. That's a little bit of a stretch. One is married, lives far away, is never sexual with me, but we sleep together, cuddle, and are pretty close. If she asked me to marry her, I would ask what her husband thinks about that, request a discussion on intimacy and living arrangements, and experience a mental rearrangement bordering on chaos. I might actually give a conditional yes. One is currently asexual but starting to look for a soulmate after a long recovery. I am not that soulmate. I would laugh, sit her down, and have an interesting talk to establish the context. One is in such general harmony with me and so in tune that I would laugh hysterically for a while and probably say yes. Even though she's not a friend in the romantic sense and we don't have a romantic relationship, I would also assume that she would sober up and regain her sensibilities soon. But who knows what the outcome would be? If I asked her, I really don't know what would happen. She'd probably say yes, as long as she can keep her friends. Story 113. The act of a woman issuing an ultimatum can be seen as manipulative. I would express to her that I will propose when I feel it is the right time and when I am ready. If that is not satisfactory for her, she is free to leave. The approach taken by men is often viewed as more reliable compared to that of women. This can be observed in divorce statistics, as women are frequently known to change their minds about commitment, while men tend to remain true to their word. Story 114. I wonder how people could get to that point in their relationship. You would have to be so far apart in terms of basic communication that it would be unreasonable to continue. In that regard, you would have to say no. Story 115. I would propose and then watch her reject it because she wants me to want to do it and feels like it is a silence ring. Story 116. Netflix created a reality show about this. Story 117. I don't have a partner, but if I did, she would be aware that I have no intention of marrying or having children at this point in my life. I would tell her that it's been enjoyable, and I wish her well. She knew from the start that I would never marry, so she should not have stayed with me past that first conversation. Story 118. Leave. If she told me she couldn't wait around anymore and needed a decision within a few days, I would consider it and let her know. If she said it had to be today, I would leave. I do not respond well to ultimatums, and marriage is not a decision that should be made on the spot by either party. If she mentioned that she had another candidate and it was either a proposal or she would switch to him, I would tell her to switch to him and give him my compliments. Let him make the mistake. Story 119. There's no need to overthink this. If you have been dating for years and you do not feel ready to propose, do not betray yourself. Just tell her the truth, even if it leads to a breakup. It's better than the constant expectation for marriage. Story 120. Well, it depends. You can say yes because you want to, or you can say yes and accept that she will control every aspect of your life going forward. You can always say no and not let someone manipulate you. My last ex was with me for a long time. We were even friends since childhood. However, I think she wanted to get married but never voiced it. She had already been married once before. I personally don't believe marriage brings any benefits if the relationship is great, but some people don't understand that concept because they actually care about what society thinks. I wanted to marry her when we got older, mainly because I still had debt and didn't want her to inherit it should I die. I have non-active trauma-based epilepsy, and my life could go either way. In the end, she listened to her friends and abandoned me and the dogs with a simple, "It's not you, it's me." After almost 10 years, she didn't even want to talk or work it out, but still wanted to remain friends. It crushed me, so I couldn't be just friends with her, especially since she had changed completely in the living my best life trap. She even had a furnished place to stay before she left. Every time I would see her, I would feel crushed and noticed she could care less. That's not a friend. I cut her off completely. I'm done with relationships in this life because I realize that my way of thinking is very different from most. In life, you make decisions but have to be willing to accept the repercussions of those actions. In the end, I've recovered from my mental struggles. I do feel lonely at times, but I would rather be alone forever than with someone with bad intentions who isn't able to see the realities of life. Story 121. I'm married, so that's easy. However, other than my wife, I don't think I've had any girlfriends who would receive a proposal based on that ultimatum. Story 122. I'm never marrying anyone before I'm ready. My mother, sisters, father, grandmother, uncles, and 2 cousins that I know of have all gone through a divorce. I have such little faith in marriage actually working that for me to ask someone to marry me, I would have to have a lot of trust in them and see that they are anywhere close to being marriage material. Story 123, leave. I hope to marry her one day, but that kind of unexpected ultimatum would not make me want to do it any sooner. Story 124, how long have you been together? Has there been a conversation about where the relationship is going? You cannot expect someone to wait forever, but if she is giving you an ultimatum, it may be time to move on. Story 125. It happened to me once. I proposed and was so miserable that my friends staged an intervention 6 months before the wedding. Life has generally been on the upswing since then. That was way back in 2006. Story 126. I knew within a couple of months if a girl was suitable for marriage. I realized I would marry my wife within a few days. We have been married for 16 years and have 2 children, and I am in love now more than ever. Story 127. I am confident this is not the first time she has brought up this subject. Perhaps you have heard it before and overlooked it. If that is the case, allowing her to leave would be a favorable outcome for her since she is clear about her desires in life. Story 128. I would leave because ultimatums are generally unhealthy, although exceptions exist. My girlfriend and I have been together for about 4 years, and we have both discussed getting married after the 6-year mark. We are on the same page. If she suddenly came to me and said, propose now or else, I would choose the or else option. Ultimatums like this are not healthy. Story 129. Leave. Even if the ultimatum is somewhat warranted, proposing in that scenario would only lead to a toxic and controlling marriage. Story 130. Have a real conversation and likely break up. 2 people in different places. Ultimatums signify control and potential problems ahead. Marry me or lose me in your 20s translates to complete your to-do list or no intimacy in your 30s and seeking a divorce attorney in your 40s. This is a major red flag. Story 131. I've learned that making ultimatums leads to the real answer quickly. The day I accidentally blacked out at a car event, confronted my then boyfriend, now husband, in public by asking why we weren't married yet, and embarrassed all his friends, had to be carried out. He felt so much sympathy for the pain I must have been feeling due to the pressure to get married, and we got married in court shortly after. While ex-boyfriends who didn't want to commit would get upset at me for embarrassing them in front of their friends and break up with me afterward, some guys need a little push in the right direction. It's a significant decision. Some guys need a strong shove. Either way, get your answer and move on because time is ticking, and the concerned comments and snide remarks from friends and family only worsen with age. Or if you decide that you're going to be single forever, prepare to deal with the annoying questions about babies and marriage, and be firm in your decision. Ask me how I know. Forget about outdated societal norms. Story 132. The person I know who did this was bipolar. After they got married, she has been a constant source of frustration. He works all the time, takes care of her child, and bought a house that is out of their price range, yet she complains about it even though it was her dream house before they purchased it. I want to get married, but if someone pressured me into it, I would walk away. Story 133. My response. Oh, okay, so why didn't you put a ring on it? My finger is looking pretty empty. Do you want to get married now? So get to proposing. I'm waiting. Either I see a ring or we are done. You have 1 week. Then I'm leaving to get tacos. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.